Connesti, how are ye? Welcome to the Candlelit Tales podcast, where we tell Irish stories. My name is Aaron, and I am not sitting in the shoffice with my sister Sorcha because, well, I'm sure you're aware of it, and if you're listening back to this, you're probably sick of hearing about it, but we're on lockdown. So I am recording this podcast in the comfort of my own gaff, which has gotten a lot less good since I spent so much time in it. But I'm recording it in the wee hours of the morning because that's when my housemates don't go around the place clattering trinkets and cups and pots and cans, because they're no noisy bunch. Like, I'm telling you, I tried to do this a few times and they're just, I love them, but they're a noisy bunch. Like, so apologies anyway for any discrepancies in the quality of this podcast. I'm sure Oisín Ryan, our producer who puts everything into a master design SoundCloud magic system, will some way work magic and make it sound lovely. Oh, I think there's a door getting open there in the background. Don't worry, didn't happen during the story. So who's up? It's like 2:30. Anyway, I shouldn't tell you that. The wee hours are a nice time for working on creative things when you're inspired. I'm going to get into this story very quickly. Won't delay too long. So if you're a fan of this, I would encourage you to go to patreon.com/Candlelit Tales if you would like to support us. Thank you very, very much for the new patrons that we've gotten in, especially this time, guys, to be honest, because all our gigs are, off, and that's how we do work and life and living. So thank you for supporting us and motivating us to do this. I'm recording this on a little handy Zoom recorder that we bought off the money that was given to us from our patrons. So thank you, patrons, for all of that. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. If you'd like to support us by sharing this podcast or telling your mate about it or telling a story to someone else and just being deadly, that's all good too. And that's all I have for you now. I'll be telling you a story in a moment. We have a few bits and pieces going out in the live stream. We'll try to do our best with that and get some stories out to you. We hope you're keeping well. We hope you're keeping safe. And Diarmuid and Grainne, part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, you could do that first, actually. 1 becomes before 2. Anyway, no more further ado. Here we go. Diarmuid Ó Raghallaigh had ruddy cheeks, curling hair and pearly white teeth. He was one of the greatest warriors of the Fianna, and he was known as the greatest lover of the Fianna too, perhaps due to his love spot, the Bull Shirka. Some say it was given to him when a beautiful woman, Youth herself, kissed him on the forehead when she left him into her bed. Any woman who saw this spot fell madly in love with Diarmuid, so he wisely grew his hair long and kept it over the love spot. Diarmuid also had a geis on him, never to pierce the skin of a wild boar, and the story goes that it was due to his own father that he got this geis. You see, a woman named Cochrane had 2 lovers, Rock and Don. From Cochrane, Diarmuid was the son of Don, and Congus was the son of Rock. One day, the son of Rock and the son of Don were out playing. The son of Rock ran between the legs of Don for fear of an animal chasing him. Don squeezed the child in a sudden burst of anger and killed him. Rock walked to his son, took out a hazel rod and struck Congus, changing him into a wild boar. He gave life back into him by putting a geis on him to hunt down and one day kill the son of Don. And and from that day forward Diarmuid had a geis on him to never pierce the skin of any wild boar. So Diarmuid took his grandfather's name to be known by, Diarmuid, grandson of Divna. Now he was a sight to behold before he even began to move, and when he did you couldn't take your eyes off him. He moved with such grace and ease and agile strength. No movement wasted more energy than it needed. No moment caught him off guard, and no blow was fast enough to ever hit him when he was in full flight. Strong, agile, and quick, as well as beautiful in every way, or so they say. Maybe it was because of this beauty and brilliance that Angus Og became his foster father, or maybe he became this brilliant because Angus was his foster father. Some say it was Angus Og, the god of love, who gave Diarmuid the love spot. He was, after all, the god of love, so it would make sense. But his form of love was to bring the beloved dead from the resting place in Brunaboynia through the veil of this world and the next, and into the resting place. Not usually the romantic type of love, but it could have been. Whether he did or not, we know only that Angus Og always looked out for his foster son and gifted him with the brilliant blades Moraltuck and Beagáltuck, the great fury and the little fury that had been given to Angus by Manannán mac Lir, the king of the sea, the god of the ocean. He also gave Diarmuid two great spears he wielded, the Gaebhui, yellow spear, and the Gaedarig, the red spear, which inflicted wounds that could not be healed. Handy for a fight. He was said to use the Gaedarig and the Moraltuck for matters of life and death, while the Gaebhui and the Beagáltuck were used for lesser battles and hunting quests and the like. Now, Diarmuid left down the Gaebhui next to the campfire that Grainne had made and stared in it as she began to prepare the meat for them on this particular night, while they were still out on the run. They had gotten into a rhythm of being out on the run now at this stage. He would hunt, snare rabbits in clever tightening traps, catch salmon jumping upstream, or smaller fish with hook and bait, and they would come across their tracks. And if they came across the tracks of a wild deer, they'd hunt them too, while Grainne would forage for berries and herbs to make tea and drinks, and she would start the fire and wait for Diarmuid to return. But Diarmuid was silent this particular night. He stared into the crackling fire and thought about the Fiann. They had become lovers while being on the run, although it took an extraordinarily long time in Grainne's opinion. But now Diarmuid was silent. He was thinking of the leader, Fionn McCoo. It was said that Diarmuid Ó Divna had saved Fionn many a time, and in so many battles he had fought, it is said that he killed over 3,000 warriors. And the time of the hostel, the quicken tree, when Diarmuid Ó Divna saved Fionn's life by facing down the king of the world himself, and Fionn narrowly escaped with his life that day. All thanks to the quickness and brilliance of Diarmuid Ó Divna's brilliant blades. But Diarmuid thought sadly of all of his friends in the Fianna that he would no longer get to see. Oisin and his own son, Oscar, Fiach and Fiacu, the bold Conan Whale, and even his brother Gull McMorna would be a sight for his sore eyes now, he thought. So there was sadness on him, and he could not help himself, but just a little bit hate himself for falling in love with the woman he also blamed for bringing him into this mess. That night, as he cooked the fish on the fire, these two lovers argued for the first time. They argued because of Diarmuid's silence. So Grainne asked the silent, brooding Diarmuid what was wrong once, and then a second time before he answered, and told her he was fine, the sort of fine that meant to stop asking, but Grainne was not one to let well enough alone. And a third time she asked him what was wrong with him, and it all came bursting out of him then that he had never asked for this, how he was lured away by her, away from his home, the only family he ever knew and loved, robbed away from him all for the longing of someone he had no intention to even talk to, let alone to run away with. The fish was burnt, but they had to move now anyway, heeding Angus's advice to always be on the move. They kicked out the fire, and before the dogs of the Fianna could be heard barking behind them, they left and ran away to eat it at the end of the valley they were standing nearby. They ate in silence, spitting out the charcoal, and made to move before they made their first bed of the night high in the rocky outlet. Waking up halfway through the night, Diarmuid turned to wake and move and go in search of a second resting place to sleep in that night, and he saw Grainne was already awake, and she's sitting on the rocks, letting her heels dangle over with tears falling from her face. She said she didn't ask for any of this either. She didn't ask to fall in love with him, and she didn't ask Fionn to come for her. But what could she do? Diarmuid felt shamed then. He went to her, grasped her hands, and wiped her tears away. He swore to her he would never be the cause of her sadness and the reason that she cried again after that. They heard the hounds barking and knew they had to move, but they left that valley together as a team, moving to find another bed to rest their heads beside one another. And after that night they had many adventures. The pursuit of Diarmuid and Grainne went all over Ireland, the length and breadth, from north to south, the highlands, the lowlands, the boglands and cliffs, the beaches and plains, and everything in between. And everywhere Diarmuid was hunting, Grainne was gathering, finding beds for them to rest their heads all over. And so many of the beds are littered throughout the land, the high hills where Diarmuid and Grainne had their beds, or the burial stones, that's where they slept too, underneath bushes, often in trees, by slopes and all over. There was many adventures too many to list. The time Diarmuid faced the fleet of the Green Champions by the Shannon, while he used trickery and cunning games and feats to fight many and distract others, until he finally had to use the Moraltach and the Gay Darrig to fight them off in a bloody battle and steal Grainne away to run away for another day. But much time passed. Grainne became pregnant while still running. Now she had pains so bad in the early days of this pregnancy that there was nothing she could eat without throwing it back up. She began to become weak and pale, So Diarmuid asked her if there was anything that could cure her or help her in any way, knowing she must know of something, and knowing he wouldn't stop till he found it. He asked her, but she wouldn't tell him. And he knew she was holding it back, which she couldn't indeed, and in her sickness he demanded she tell him what to do, because he really didn't know what to do, and he needed her to tell him so he could feel useful. So she asked Diarmuid if he knew the rowan tree in the woods of Ross. It was guarded by a giant called Sharavan Loch Lanach. There's surely one of Lachlan. One eye he had, and he could not be killed by drowning or fire or any blade or weapon that was not his own great big giant club. You see, there was a great match of hurling one day, she told Diarmuid, between the men of day and the Fianna of old, to see who were the greatest players. The ever-living ones came with provisions from the plain of promise, with nuts and berries, and a harper of theirs dropped a berry while he was playing the harp and watching the game. Doing two things was a bad idea. He didn't notice until the following year, and the great rowan tree with the fruits of the people from beyond the veil growing on it, with magic to cure any ailment in them. Well, the magic folk, they set a guard next to it, and knowing that he could not be killed of drowning or fire or any weapon that wasn't his own great big giant club, they thought he was a pretty good guard. And Diarmuid figured she'd be wanting one of those particular berries. Nothing else in the world would do her. Was that correct? She smiled sweetly at him then, and, well, he was off. And he came towards the rowan tree, and he saw the huge giant with one eye, the surly one. But even his throws at the gate Darrick and the great blows he was throwing into it with the Moralta could not stop Sharavan, the surly. Very black and ugly he was, having crooked teeth, that one big posthumous eye glaring at him in the middle of his forehead. So Diarmuid waited till he could get a great swipe at him, and then jumped out of the way as the huge club went over his head. He ducking under and around and managed to knock it out and free from his hand. Then he took the great club and struck 3 great strikes to the head of Sharavan, the surly one. They went up then to where the giant used to sleep, in the taller branches where the sweeter berries were at the top, and there in the giant's bed they lay together, and while Diarmuid stretched out his hand and took down berries and fed them to Grainne, who wouldn't eat, she said, anything that wasn't given to her from Diarmuid's hand, and to Diarmuid's relief she ate them well. And then she ate as if she hadn't eaten in weeks, and I guess she hadn't, so she gorged on these berries, and she became full and fattened with delight from them. And after she fell into a deep sleep. Now Diarmuid knew that the Fianna were hot on their trail. They were close behind. He could hear the hounds coming, but he didn't want to leave. Shortly after, he saw Oisín and Oscar, his son, coming on and even galloping towards them. And they were there with all of the men of the Fianna, and Diarmuid looked down to see all of the heroes, his brothers in arms, looking for his trail, but they could not find them. And then he saw Fionn McCool walking in, asking, demanding, had any sight or sound of Diarmuid being found. Now, Diarmuid thought Fionn glanced up at the tree, but he was well hidden and disguised in the branches. He knew he couldn't see him. But he suspected, as Fionn McCool sat down and called for a chessboard, that he wasn't going anywhere, because he might be suspecting Diarmuid was still around. Oisin went to play with Fionn, and Diarmuid couldn't help but get engrossed in this game. And he watched as Fionn McCool played his son Oisin, and Oisin was not the greatest tactical player, you see. Fionn and Diarmuid, however, often had great games of chess. One would beat the other one day, while the next would win the following day. But Oisin was more of a poet than a tactical chess player, and he was about to make a terrible move, so Diarmuid grabbed a berry and threw it down with accuracy to land on the right point of the board to place the piece. Oisin, quick as you like, moved the piece in his hand to where the berry had landed. Fionn grunted and glanced up at the branches, but they continued their game, and well, after a while, Oisin seemed to just wait, and a berry would land exactly where he would need to place the next piece. And this was how Oisin won the game against Fionn McCool, who stood up in anger, throwing the pieces on the board to the ground, saying, "I did not lose to you, Oisin. Diarmuid o' Divna beat me, and he's in that tree." He roared up, and Angus Og appeared next to Diarmuid o' Divna's shoulder. Grainne awoke, full of fright and fear, for the Fianna were gathering around the base of the tree. But Angus Og offered to wrap them in his magic cloak and spirit them away. After that, they had not many more close encounters with the Fianna, but time kept on moving and they kept on running. Diarmuid and Grainne were so good at it now that Grainne was, able to have 4 kids while on the run, 3 sons and a daughter, Tóraíocht. But eventually she asked her father, the High King, if he would do anything to calm Fionn McCool down and see if there was some way of getting peace between them. After all, so much time had gone by, perhaps it was time to let bygones be bygones. Angus Og delivered the message to the king, and the wise man was not one to refuse one of the magic folk. Messages were sent to Fionn, and the rest of the Fianna begged with the messenger for Fionn to finally put this aside. Lands were given to Diarmuid and Grainne and their children. They were allowed to live in one place in peace without fear of the Fianna following and finding them. And they were out in the west of Ireland. They were left there with a great home, lands, plenty of space to hunt wild game and fish and train and whatever they wanted to do with the lands. And no sooner had they landed in their home than Grainne began a preparation for a great feast. A year and a day went into preparation, and she got drink from all over the world. All forms of grain were brought into the house. Every form of meat in the banquet hall was elaborate. And so she sent messengers to all of the 7 battalions of the Fianna to join them in their home after the preparations were done to have a reconciliation and a brilliant feast. The feasting went on for so long that it was almost as long as the preparations itself, and they kept feasting for an entire year, celebrating the peace now found between Fionn and Diarmuid, although there was little love in Fionn's eye throughout the whole of the year. Diarmuid noticed this, of course, and saddened his heart. But after the year went by, he still knew he was not part of the Fianna. He was looking out at his lands. His Tóraíocht was at his side, and Fionn came to his house. he asked him to follow him for a hunt. Now there's a steeliness in his eyes. The Fianna were called to help. There was a terrible beast plaguing the people around the foothills of Benbulben, and Fionn asked Diarmuid for help. So Diarmuid took up the gay boy in the Beagálta and went out to help Fionn and the men of the Fianna in this hunt. And they went up the steep slopes of Benbulben and came to the tabletop of it. And the mist had descended and landed in heavy now, and they heard noises of a ferocious beast hunting them, it seemed, as they were trying to follow or find any tracks. And out of nowhere, the boar's deadly red eyes came running towards Diarmuid, who leapt back, knowing he was under a geis never to pierce the skin of a wild boar. He had no choice but to swing at it with Beagálta, but the sword itself shattered in two, and the wild boar gored Diarmuid through and through. And Diarmuid took the hilt of the sword and dashed the brains of the boar. Seeing his blood fall all around him, filling up in a pool, he looked at Fionn and fell to his knees. He'd gone pale now, knowing this was a death blow, his entrails now leaking out into his hands. He looked at Fionn. He said, "You can save me. One drink from your cupped hands, because of the magic on your thumb from when you burnt it on the summit of knowledge. Any man who drinks from your hands will be healed. Give me a drink, Fionn." Fionn turned and walked to a stream. He knelt down and pooled the water into his cupped hands. And as he was walking back to the dying Diarmuid, he let the water trickle out between his fingers. When he got back to Diarmuid, his pale face looked agonized to see Fionn. He asked him why had he not forgiven him after this long year's peace and truce. He begged him now for a drink of water from his magic cupped hands to heal him. And so Fionn turned around again, berating himself, shaking his head it seemed, and he knelt down now, determined to save Diarmuid, a son of his and one of the Fianna. And he turned around, but something in him became frustrated, and before he knew it, he had made fists of his hands and the water trickled away once more. So he came to Diarmuid with nothing but dismay. He ran back to the water, determined now to save Diarmuid's life, who was still wheezing behind him, his last breaths Fionn knew, and he grabbed up the pool of water in his hands and he walked steadfast towards him, holding this water, knowing this would save him. He poured it into the open mouth of Diarmuid Ó Divna, who was already dead, killed by the death blow of the wild boar of Benbulben, who some say was the son of Rock, come to fulfill the geis his father put on him to avenge his own life. And Diarmuid Ó Divna, the beautiful one with the bald shirka, died as beautiful as the day that youth herself kissed him on the forehead. Well, thank you very much for listening to that story. I hope you enjoyed. Please do give us some feedback if you have any. This story was actually requested, and we were delighted to dig up some more research and go hunting through the archives and find some great versions of this in Lady Gregory and elsewhere. They're in the show notes. I've copied up a few of the links that I used for this story, and Sorok and I talked it out as well, I guess, and how we create these stories tends to be an over and back. Usually we have a post-show chat discussing just that, and we're separating our podcast now because of isolation. We're phoning it in. That means kind of like an excuse, but not really. This time we're phoning in our live chat. We're phoning in our post-show chat as a separate podcast. So tune in. We're going to be doing them on Saturdays from now on as a live thing that we do, so that you can ask us questions. We found out the last time that we did it that people from all over the world tuned in, from Australia, Bulgaria, a woods in the middle of nowhere, that was gas. Seville, someone from ages away. We're in Little Ireland there, and like people from all over the gaff is listening. That's gas. Anyway, thank you for listening. If you want to support us on patreon.com/Candlelit Tales, that'd be class. That helps. Sorry for the noise of the door. It's the wee hours of the morning, and someone just got up to go for a piss or get a glass of water. You never quite know. I do apologise if the quality of the volume and the thing isn't quite up to standard. I'm not in a studio, I'm in my gaff, hence the isolation thing. Is there anything else I need to tell you before we stop this? I don't think there is, really. We love myths, we love legends, we love stories. We miss telling them to people in the same room as us. It gives us a lot of life and love that we can share with people, and it's really beautiful to do. And it's a form of creativity that I've fallen massively in love with, because it's so inspired from the moment, and you get so involved in what you're saying and feeding off from people giving you in a live atmosphere. And in the last year we've tried to recreate this in our podcast and learn how to do this in a different medium, and thanks to Oisin and Ryan, who played the music for this and I guess produced this piece for us as well, or these podcasts for us as well. We've managed that, and thank you for the listeners who've given us feedback as well. We will be back doing more live stuff soon, and I hope you're keeping well. We've been looking up some very interesting stories, because there's a lot of wisdom in these old stories, as well as entertainment and gas crackology. There's a lot of light in there, and that you can really shine into the darker hours, I guess. So tune in. We'll be sharing some more positive stories that are important to listen to. Characters like Fintan McBokra and the likes. Shout out to the Harbour Bar, who gave us control of their Instagram live. That's going live on Wednesday. But if you're listening back to this, it might be up on YouTube. Follow us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, because we're putting our live videos up there and other video content as well. And that's enough from me, guys. I hope you're keeping well, and you